Hello everyone, this week we talk about economics of political action. So first let's talk about the size and growth of the US government. In the following slides, we will see that total government spending, federal, state and local, as a share of the US economy grows enormously over the years. Total government spending accounted for only 9.9% of GDP in 1930, and only one-third of this spending was at the federal level. Government spending, particularly at the federal level, soared from 1930 to 1980. Total government spending rose from 9.9% of GDP in 1930 to 32.2% in 1980, which is more than 3 times its 1930 level. And after remaining fairly constant between 1980 and 2000, the size of government increased substantially to 40% in 2010 and 36% in 2015. Let's see the pictures. The blue one is the federal and the green one is the state and local. And as you see, in 1930, federal level was 3.3% of GDP, and it grows to, in 2010, 25.2% of GDP, and then dropped to 22.4%. And the green one is state and state-local spending increased 14.9% of GDP in 2010 and dropped to 13.7% in 2015. And let's understand how the federal government spends the money in 2015. And the main categories are Medicare and health, 27.9%, Social Security, 24.1%, and then we have defense, 16%, and income security, 13.8%. And also government pays for interest, 6.1%, because government borrows money. When we look at the state and local spending, we see that education is the highest component, 27.4%, and then public welfare and health, 24%, and then also state government pays interest on debt, and we have administration and other spending and insurance trust, 10.5%. Let's look at the transfer payments. So what are transfer payments? These are the payments that government collects tax and then redistribute that tax income to people who needs it. So it's a transfer of money from one pocket to another. Unemployment insurance is an example of transfer payment. So what happens when you lose your job, laid off, then you apply for assistance from the government to pay your expenses, and then you get up to 24 weeks unemployment insurance. So this unemployment insurance is financed by tax payments. And as you see from the figure, government transfer payments have grown persistently during the past 8 decades. It reached to 17.3% in 2015. Next, we are going to talk about similarities and differences between political and market allocation. First of all, competition is present in both the government and the market sectors. And second, scarcity is present in both sectors. If the government uses resources to provide a good, those resources are unavailable for the production of other goods. This is true even if the good is provided free of charge to certain consumers. Next, let's talk about the differences between government and markets. In the market sector, there is generally a one-to-one link between payment for and consumption of the goods. But government allocation can break this linkage. As you see in the transfer payments, the cost is distributed among taxpayers, benefit is a small group. So you're not maybe benefiting from unemployment insurance, but you pay for the cost. Private sector action is based on mutual agreement. Public sector is based on majority rule. So in the private sector, you want to buy a product, and if the seller wants to sell the product, then there is the mutual agreement. In public sector, even if you don't agree with the proposal of the politician, since majority rule wins, you might have to bear the consequences of the proposal even if you don't agree with the proposal. When collective decisions are made legislatively, voters must choose among candidates who represent a bundle of positions on issues. So you cannot find a candidate for each proposal. For instance, you like candidate A, all the 3 policies he has, but you don't like the 4th policy about climate change. Still, you vote for the candidate. This greatly limits the power of individual voters to make their preferences count on specific issues. There is seldom a bundle purchase problem in markets. Next, income and influence are distributed differently in the market and government sector. In the marketplace, people are able to purchase more goods and services when they have larger incomes. In the political sector, those able and most willing to use their time, persuasive skills, organizational abilities, and financial contributions to help politicians get votes will have more political influence. So it's not about income only, you have to have other abilities to get political influence. Next, let's look at the political decision making. So what is public choice analysis? Public choice analysis applies the tools of economics to the political process in order to provide insight concerning how the process works. Self-interested behavior is present in both market and political sectors. So public choice analysis and the political process can be viewed as a complex interaction among the three groups. We have the voters, which are taxpayers, we have the politicians, and we have the bureaucrats. Let's start with voter. Voter is the consumer. Voters will tend to support those candidates who they believe will provide them with the most government services and transfer benefits, or net of personal costs. So voters usually favor the politicians that provides them the most services and transfer payments. Here we have an important concept that I want you to understand, rational ignorance effect. Recognizing their vote is unlikely to be decisive. Most voters have little incentive to obtain information on issues and alternative candidates. So it's not the same in private markets. When you want to buy a car, you know that the consequences of buying a good or a bad car affects you. You did a good research before you buy the car. But it's not the case for voting, because you know that the vote is unlikely to be decisive, your vote. And because of the rational ignorance effect, voters will be uninformed on many issues. Such issues will exert little influence on their political decision-making process. The second agent is politician, which is a supplier. Winning elections will be a primary motivation of politician. Just as profits are the lifeblood of the market entrepreneur, votes are the lifeblood of the politician. Rationally uninformed voters often must be convinced to want a candidate. Legislative bodies, like a board of directors, first establish the general direction of the policy, appoint and supervise bureaucrats who carry out the day-to-day operations of government, and then set the budgets of agencies and bureaus. And government bureaucrats is the last one, are the political participants. Bureaucrats, which are individuals who handle day-to-day operations of government, seek promotions, job security, and power. The interests of bureaucrats are often complementary with those of the interest groups they serve. They want larger budgets and program expansion, and they are usually serve in the interest of bureaucrats. And now we need to understand when the political process works well. Now you are seeing different types of distribution of benefits and costs among voters. There's type 1, type 2, type 3, and type 4. Please spend a couple of minutes to understand this table. Type 1 represents benefits are widespread, costs are widespread. Type 2 refers to benefits concentrated and costs are widespread. Type 4, benefits widespread, costs are concentrated, and type 3 represents concentrated benefits and costs. When benefits or costs are either both widespread or concentrated, which we are talking type 1 or type 3, representative government tends to undertake projects that are productive and reject those that are unproductive. When benefits are concentrated and costs widespread, which is type 2, representative government is biased towards the adoption of counterproductive, inefficient activity. And last, when benefits are widespread, but the costs are concentrated, which is type 4, the political process often rejects productive projects. So other things constant, legislators will have a strong incentive to support political actions that provide voters with large total benefits relative to costs. If a government project is productive, it will be possible to allocate the project's costs so that all voters will gain. When voters pay in proportion to benefits received, all voters will gain if the government action is productive, and they will lose if it's unproductive. Under these circumstances, there is harmony between good politics and economic efficiency. So here is the idea. If you pay as much as you receive benefit, then there is no problem. Because if a project is productive, everybody will gain. and if a project is unproductive, everybody is going to lose. So under these conditions, there is a harmony between good politics and economic efficiency. Let's see one example to understand what I mean. Consider this government program. The total benefits $40 exceed the tax cost, which is $25. It's therefore an efficient program. Under Plan A, as you see, the cost $5 imposed on each voter, and it's the same. If decided by majority vote, the project will be rejected by a 3-2 margin. Why? Because Adam has a net benefit, $20 benefit, and $5 cost, $15 of net benefit. He will favor the project. Chan, the same positive net benefit, he will favor the project. But Green, Lee, and Diaz having a negative net benefit. Their cost is more than the benefit they receive. Under majority rule, Green, Lee, and Diaz are not going to accept the project. Therefore, the project is not going to pass. Now let's look at Plan B. This time the costs are distributed proportional to the benefits received. For instance, Adams received 50% of the benefits, so the cost is 50%. 12.5 is 50% of $25 of total cost. And Chan also pays proportional to the benefit, and so on. If that is the case, the project is going to pass. Why? Because everybody is receiving now net benefit. This example shows that harmony between politics and economic efficiency exists when costs are allocated in proportion to benefits. And let's see when the political process works poorly. When voting conflicts with economic efficiency, and we will understand now spatial interest effect. A spatial interest issue generates large personal benefit for a small number of constituents while imposing a small individual cost on a large number of others. So everybody is paying a small number of costs, but the benefits are concentrated on a small number of constituents. Interest group members feel strongly about issues that provide them with substantial personal benefits. Such issues will dominate their political choices. In contrast, voters bearing the cost of such legislation often are uninformed on the issue because it exerts only a small impact on their personal welfare and because of the rational ignorance effect. Politicians have a strong incentive to favor the views of spatial interests even if the action is inefficient. We have two types of legislation here. Log rolling and pork barrel legislation strengthen the spatial interest effect. Politicians will tend to favor established businesses with a stronger record of political contributions and better knowledge of lobbying techniques than newer innovative upstart firms. For example, Uber is a new innovative firm, and it's much safer for somebody calling for Uber because you can read the reviews for the driver and also your route is followed on the system. But taxi industry is old way of doing the same business. But taxi industry is more established and they are against Uber. Why? Because they are losing their market power when Uber enters to the market. That's what happened in Turkey, my home country. Uber is banned. Why? Because taxi industry, which is the special interest group, was dominant in the politics, and then they push back Uber, saying that Uber is actually not good for consumers, which is not true. Another example is Tesla and auto dealers. Here you can find the sugar example. The sugar program provides an example of the spatial interest effect. Price supports and import quotas cause the price of sugar in the US to be 50 to 100% above the world level. So sugar growers are happy. Why? Because they are selling at a higher price and the competition is banned. How? By import quotas. Approximately 20,000 sugar growers drive huge personal gains, average $85,000 per grower, while imposing a small personal cost, $25 increase in sugar expenses per household. The sugar lobby contributed more than $16 million to politicians during the most recent election cycle. The program continues even though it's counterproductive. Now let's look at one example, trading votes and passing counterproductive legislation. Consider a bill in Congress that would put a post office in District A, dredge a harbor in B, and build a new stadium in District C. So benefits of post office to A, $10, which is positive, but has a negative impact in B, voters in B and C. Why? Because they have to pay for it. In total, voters in A, B, and C districts come out ahead. despite the costs of paying taxes for activities in other districts, and they agree to vote together. If that happens, all these two projects are going to pass. But with this bill, there are no benefits to voters in D and E. Further, the sum of the benefits and costs for all voters together is negative. Look at the total net benefit is negative $6. With majority rule, representatives from districts A, B, and C can and often will pass counterproductive legislation. Next, we will talk about short-sightedness effect, which is again one of the voting conflicts with economic efficiency. Issues that yield clearly defined current benefits at the expense of future costs that are difficult to identify. So, the political process is biased toward the adoption of such proposals even when they are inefficient. Politicians prefer projects that result in benefits today, but the costs can be spread to the future. The short-sightedness effect explains why politicians will find debt financing and unfunded promises attractive. Why? Because with debt financing, the benefits are today, but the cost is spread to future. You are going to pay your debt back in the future, which will increase your taxes in the future. The politicians do not want to increase the tax today. So debt financing makes it possible for politicians to provide current benefits to voters without levying an equivalent amount of current taxes to pay for them. Another inefficiency is rent seeking. Actions by individuals and interest groups designed to restructure public policy in a manner that will either directly or indirectly redistribute more income to themselves. Widespread use of taxing, spending, and regulatory powers of government that favors some at the expense of others will encourage rent seeking. When the government is heavily involved in granting of contracts, subsidies, tax credits, low-interest loans, regulatory favors, and other forms of government intervention, then business firms, labor organizations, and other well-organized interests will compete for the government favors. Rent-seeking diverts resources away from productive activities. The output of economies with substantial amounts of rent-seeking will fall below their potential. And the next inefficiency is in the structure of incentives and the efficiency of government-operated firms and agencies. In the public sector, the absence of the profit motive reduces the incentive of producers to keep costs low. Neither is there a bankruptcy process capable of weeding out inefficient producers. In public sector, managers are seldom in a position to gain personally from measures that reduce costs. They don't reduce costs, instead they increase the costs. Because when they have more budget, they can be more effective. But we don't know this budget is used for an efficient project or not. Because public officials and bureau managers spend other people's money, they have less incentive to be cost conscious. And next we talk about political favoritism, crony capitalism, and government failure. As government spending, subsidies, income transfers, financial bailouts, and regulatory favors grow, businesses and other well-organized groups will expend more resources seeking to obtain government favors. As a result, we have the crony capitalism, and it grows relative to the market allocation. So what is crony capitalism? It's the situation where the allocation of resources is determined by political favors rather than by consumer preferences translated through the market profit and loss system. Under crony capitalism, rather than providing equal treatment of individuals and businesses under the law, government uses spending, subsidies, and regulations to favor those most willing to provide political decision makers with campaign contributions and other forms of political support. And the result is economic inefficiency. Crony capitalism is often driven by a bootlegger Baptist strategy, greedy action packaged as a moral behavior. For example, opportunistic rent seekers, the bootleggers, often frame their programs in a manner designed to attract support from naive idealists, the Baptists. They argue their programs will enhance child safety, promote energy independence, save family farms, or some other widely supported goal. But when one looks below the surface, one discovers that these programs are about government favoritism, providing handsome profits to the well-organized special interest groups. Bootlegger Baptist examples include Mattel. Mattel was a toy-producing company, incorporating costly testing procedures into the Consumer Product Safety Improvement Act of 2008. The action increased the cost of rivals and drove used toy sellers like Goodwill out of the market. Another example is GE, General Electric, partners with environmentalists to advocate subsidies and tax breaks for alternative energy sources. This government favoritism increased demand for GE turbine engines, solar panels, and wind farms. Result, GE earned $15 billion in 2010 and paid zero corporate income taxes. So we need to compare market entrepreneurs and crony capitalists. Market entrepreneurs get ahead by providing consumers with products that are more highly valued than the resources required for their production. Crony capitalists, on the other hand, get ahead by providing political players with campaign contributions and other political resources in exchange for government contracts, subsidies, tax benefits, and other forms of political favoritism. Projects of crony capitalists will often be counterproductive. Crony capitalism reflects government failure and undermines the legitimacy of the democratic political process. And finally, let's talk about markets and government. Two key points about government. When government protects private property, enforces contracts even-handedly, maintains monetary stability, and refrains from regulations that restrict entry into the market, it provides the foundation for the smooth operation of markets. But government fails too. Both political and market organization have shortcomings. Public choice analysis shows that there is sometimes a conflict between winning elections and following sound policies. For some types of activities, there is reason to believe that the political action that will help one get elected will, at the same time, encourage counterproductive activities that reduce income levels. So, the following factors often result in market failure. Lack of competition, so we need government to fix it. Externalities, we need again government. Public goods, yes. Poor information, yes. But the following factors often result in government failure: the spatial interest effect, the short-sightedness effect, rent-seeking, and weak incentives for operational efficiency. So this is the end of chapter 6. Thank you.